So, in this rapidly changing world, how does that affect you? Well, for a minute, I want you to think about your future. Where are you going to be in 10 years' time? You're ambitious. You've wanted to be a chartered accountant for many years. You've achieved that. All this time when you were studying, whether you did your BCom or whether you did chartered accountancy, you were given a syllabus, you were given a curriculum, and you completed it and you showed your competence. All of a sudden you come out the other side and now there is no syllabus, there is no curriculum, you've just let loose in life. Well, at the end of the day, it's time for you to write the curriculum, it's time for you to write the syllabus. You have to think about where you want to be, and then, most importantly, how exactly are you going to get there? Now you might think, I don't know where I'm going to be in 10 years' time. But that's like saying, let me get into the car and let me start driving and we'll see where I turn up. You can't do that. This is your life. You only get it once. At the end of the day, for anything to happen in the real world, it has to happen in the imaginary world first. I.e., you have to think it, you have to dream it. Once you've dreamt it, you then go about doing it. So if you turn around and say, I don't really have a goal, I don't know where I'm going to be, you are going to be in the car, kind of driving, just going forward, but not really knowing where you're going. You, as a chartered accountant, have shown that you're incredibly ambitious and you're incredibly competent and capable. Why can't you say, I want to be the next Ishaq Hussain, CFO of the Tata Group. I want to be the next Deepak Parekh of HDFC. I want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. Whatever, I want to be the next Narayana Murthy. You need to have a goal. What is a goal? All a goal is a dream with a deadline. So we're saying, this is where I want to be at this time, therefore how am I going to get there? And you've got to start planning it. You might think, I don't know if that's possible, but I want to tell you a brief story. I'm very proud and privileged to be on the board of an amazing organization called the Systems Research Institute, which was set up by Professor Krishnaiah. Now, some of you may not have heard of Professor Krishnaiah, but Professor Krishnaiah was the person who brought the first computer to India and set up the first computer lab at IIM Ahmedabad in 1970. He also did a lot of recruitment of students for various companies, and he recruited somebody out of one of the IITs, whose name happened to be Narayana Murthy, and worked with him in Patni, sent him to France. And it was under Professor Krishnaiah's banyan tree that the whole concept of Infosys, along with the others, was kind of conceptualized by that amazing group of people. And you know what? They've delivered. They've got $1 billion company. Do you really think they sat there under that banyan tree saying, yeah, let's see what happens? No, they had a vision for what they wanted to build, and they worked on that vision. Narayana Murthy, Nandan Nilekani, all of them had exactly the same amount of time as you and me. It was how they chose to use that time that really made them the success that they are. So going back to you and going back to this question, you have to think about where you want to be in 10 years' time. Do I want to be a finance director? Do I want to be a CFO? Do I want to be on the board of a listed company, running my own company? You have to decide. So let's think for a minute about what qualities you need to be the CFO of a company or the managing director of your own company. What are you going to have to do? Well, one thing you won't be doing is the number crunching. You won't be sitting there doing the debit and credit entries. You're going to have staff who do that for you. So what are you going to spend your time doing? Well, if you're in practice, if you're working in an audit firm, a lot of what you will be doing is sorting out audit and accounting issues and advising and making recommendations to your clients. Winning new business is an important part for any person within a company at a senior level. You go to networking events, you have to know how to network. You have to know how to make pitches to companies. It's not enough to have the knowledge, you have to be able to communicate it. You're going to have to budget. You only have a finite number of resources. How are you going to use those resources? Presentation, team management, managing and planning your own time, managing your staff, managing your cash flow, the most important area, how are you going to make choices and decisions? How are you going to use the next 10 years, every minute of the next 10 years, to help take your career forward? And remember that little seed from the beginning. How are you going to take that seed, which is your company and the growth it's at the moment, and flourish it into a plant, a tree, a forest, a jungle? That's what you should be aiming for. We're chartered accountants, we're ambitious. That's certainly what I thought. And I have to say, to a certain extent, I think I did it. At 26, I became the managing director of the international division of a listed company. And I'll tell you a little bit more about my journey and how it's relevant to you in a minute. But the thing to remember is when you get, or as you go further up in your career, those are the things you're going to have to concentrate on, not the technical competence of, do I know every single IFRS? Do I know every tax law? You're going to have people under you that know that. Can you make decisions? Can you make recommendations? Can you give good advice? Can you articulate it? That's what it's about. So, what we did at GTG is we went around and we talked to some of the most amazing people in business. We talked to people like Ishat Hussain at the Tata Group. We talked to Partha from Mahindra & Mahindra, Deepak Parekh from HDFC, YM Kale, and many, many others. We talked to the Wipros, the Infosys, the Genpacts, the HSBCs, the Deutsche Banks, and we asked all of their senior leadership, what are the global challenges that are facing chartered accountants? And they said, quite simply, business needs are changing constantly. Interest rates go down, exchange rates change, the business has to change. Suddenly, customers go bust, cash flow changes. We need people who can think. Because our strategies are changing constantly as the business changes. And if our strategies are changing constantly, our chartered accountants, who are the backbone of not just financial strategy, but many of the strategies within an organization, they need to understand that change almost before anyone else. They need to go through that 1.8 zettabytes of information that's out there to try and work out what's important for our business and how we can take our business forward. So what the leadership in India is saying is we don't need accountants. We need business strategists. And it's business strategists who are going to help take our businesses forward. So we're expecting our chartered accountants to understand other cultures. If I am Ishat Hussain from the Tata Group and I'm thinking about an acquisition in another country, I have to understand their culture. It's not just about the balance sheet anymore. It's not just about the financial statements. Will this be a good fit with my group is a decision that he has to make. Yes, he can get the feedback from learning and development and HR, but ultimately he and the board make that decision and they're going to look to him as the CFO to give the best recommendation for how they should proceed. So not only are you expected to understand other cultures, you're expected to communicate at all levels, to the most junior person within the organization, to the most senior person, to somebody who really understands finance and accounting, to people who don't understand finance and accounting at all. They all need to understand the financial impact of the decisions they're making. So a chartered accountant needs to have really good communication skills, needs to be able to break problems down into small parts and explain that clearly to other people. So ultimately, we need broader and more integrated thinking in order to really succeed in a global world. So those are the challenges that the leaders felt existed in the world for chartered accountants, but we probed them further and we said, okay, where are the skills gaps at the moment with our chartered accountants here in India? And they said, quite simply, these are the challenges. So We are analytically brilliant. We are technically superb, but we tend to look at it in a very narrow way. And at the end of the day, when we're making business decisions, business is never just about one technical area. It's about a number of different things together. Written communication. The leaders said that too many of us write in SMS language, or write in bullet points, or write completely the other way, write far too much when they need to write something much, much shorter. If you can say it in 2 lines, say it in 2 lines. I don't have time, is what the leaders are saying. Well, you know that. How many times do you press delete when you're reading your emails because the email is far too long, right? You don't want to get to the bottom. So if you can say it in 2 lines and your leader understands it, they're much, much happier. However, a lot of the time, the written communication that we're writing at the moment is not focused enough on the user and how they're going to use that information. Another point, the leaders are saying when we make decisions, like let's say whether we are going to buy a company in another country, they'll have a tax team that will tell them the tax implications, audit team that will tell them the audit implications, legal team that will tell them the legal implications, etc., etc. HR tell them the cultural implications. But you know what? It's the chartered accountant and the board that have to make that final decision, which means a chartered accountant needs to be able to integrate all of that knowledge together and then make a decision. One of the other challenges for us, we've never been taught really how to develop teams. It's something that's very difficult to put into an exam paper, but is absolutely crucial for the development. You know this saying, or you may not have heard the saying, but people don't leave companies, they leave managers. So next time somebody in your organization leaves, really ask the question, if their manager had been more supportive, had given them more opportunities, would they have left? There are so many opportunities in the world today, but really from personal experience, and this is an experience shared by Deepak Parekh, for example, and Ishant Hussain. These are people who have been with the same organization for many, many years, and they've got to the top. Why have they got to the top? Because they stayed, they persevered with those companies. They understood how those companies work. If you keep changing from company to company over the years, you end up losing and not understanding that much about what makes that company work. So it makes the chances of you getting to a higher post much more difficult because you don't understand the intrinsics of all the different parts of the business. And generally, another point that's come out is that thinking outside the box is not as developed as we'd like it to be, because we're not global enough in our thinking, we're not reading enough global information, we're not getting enough global influences. So this was another concern or gap that was identified by some of the leaders. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Well, I think the first and the most important thing is to admit the challenge. There is a challenge. We do have a skills gap. Now, there may be some of you who are looking and saying, well, that's not true. How can she say that? Are you like this little boy in the classroom who says, I don't want to listen. I don't want to know. That's not true. What I'm saying is right and what you're saying is wrong. Well, what I'd like to do at this point is take you to an amazing quote by an amazing man who walked here in India, Lord Buddha. He says, all that we are is a result of what we have thought. If we think we can change, if we think we can learn those skills, and if we think we can get to the top of our profession, we can. If we think, however, no, there's nothing more to learn, I'm just going to stay as I am, then that's how you're going to stay. You cannot move on without learning, opening your mind, reflecting on what's been said, and taking yourself and driving yourself further. All that we are is a result of what we have thought. If we think bad things, we tend to become a bad person. If we think positive